Welcome to sprint 14 of Dogen, the MASD code generator. This is a particularly exciting sprint for us because we finally got to doing some refactoring of the metamodel and to introduce the modeling elements that have not been dealt with correctly now that we understand model-driven engineering a bit better. But we'll start the release notes, or the discussion about the release, with a breaking change. Sadly, we don't really have version backwards compatibility really with Dogen because it's in such early stages of development. In the future, once we stabilize the API, we'll have backwards compatibility. But for now, every time we need to make a change, we just break things, which is a bit annoying for users, but I'm afraid that's how it's going to have to be for now. So in this release, we had one breaking change, which is, well, we had a couple of breaking changes, but we had one in particular which is related to languages, which is we renamed the fields, two fields, the input language and the output language fields. These are now called input technical space and the output technical space. So you just need to update these fields in order for your diagrams to be processable for the latest version of Dogen. I'll demonstrate that in a second when I demonstrate the main feature of this release. And that is the decorations as metamodel elements. So as I explained in the release notes, for a while now we've been trying to promote certain configuration elements of the code generator to become from just data to real metamodel elements, just like a class is a metamodel element. And so the first thing we tackled in this release is the decoration. So originally we had a number of JSON files to store decoration data, and I'll show these in a minute. Each decoration file had its own data format and its own way of doing things. It required lots of special handling for each type of file, and there were different ways of binding these things into the model internally. However, the more we learn about MDE, the more clear it becomes that all these things should really be modeled as metamodel elements. So, I mean, there are several aspects to decorations, such as the license, the mode line, and so forth, but normally we just call all of these decorations. And what I'll do is I'll quickly demonstrate how decorations have been used in Dogen now that they're metamodel elements. So I'm going to go back to the model that we had from the previous sprint, where there was no decorations whatsoever. I have done a couple of changes to this model. I've introduced a new reference, a reference to a model called MASD, which I'll show in a minute. And I've also introduced a couple of keys here. Decoration.enabled set to false, and the decoration marker name set to verbose. But because it's decoration is set to false, nothing is going to happen. So if I go to Emacs, you can see how the file looks like at the moment. I'm at the very top of the file, as you can see here. It contains the include guards, contains a set of includes, and then the class itself. So if I now go to a shell, I've got a few commands here, but if we just clear the shell for a minute. So we have Dogen installed, just to double check. Our version is version 14, as you can see here, so latest. So if I just generate the model as it is at present, as you can see here in Git, nothing happens, no changes. So if we go back to the diagram, and in the diagram, if I change from enable false to enable true, and if I now go back to my shell, and if I regenerate this diagram, when I go back to Git, as you can see, there's a number of changes here now. Largely the change is just what's normally known as a location string, but we call in Dogen a generation marker. Just a set of data about the generation, some message informing us that this is a code-generated file, some timestamp, and some warning. So if I go back to that file we had a second ago, you can see here how it looks like now. Now, there's a number of elements of the decoration that can be changed, such as, for example, the license. So if I here just type Dogen MASD decoration, sorry, generation, if I could type dot decoration dot license name. And if I set that to be MASD.GPL v3, if I go back to my Emacs shell, now what should happen now is, in addition to the blurb that we had before, you can also see that a license has been added, the GPL license, and it's been added to all the files. Now, in the past, these were data files that contained all these bits of information, and it was not really easy for users to, in fact, it was not really possible for users to update these. But now, what we've done is, instead, we treat these as regular model elements. So, here in the MASD model, which is distributed with Dogen, you can see how these metamodel elements are represented. And as you can see, GPL v3 is just a regular class with the stereotype of MASD decoration license, which means it's a metamodel element within the MASD metamodel via the magic of UML profiles. And as you can see here, the comment of the license contains the details of the license. So if you were to alter these, then the license would change. So for instance, say I take GPL v3 and copy it across here to my model. If I copy it here, it's a bit big, so I'm not sure if you can see everything. And if I now change GPL v3 in the short form to contain some text, and if we put it here, and now instead of referring to MASD v3, I'm just going to refer to GPL v3. If I was to regenerate this model, in fact, just for good measure, what we'll do is we'll go back to Git and we'll stage all of these files. And so that you can see the difference. Did I made a mistake with the name? At present, unfortunately at present you need to fully qualify the name of the license. So in this particular case, our model is called Dogen.hello world.gplv3. Okay, now we've done that. As you can see, it now regenerates. And if I go to the hello world, as you can see, we're now using a different GPL v3, which is the one we defined for this model. And the same thing applies to all the different decoration elements that are defined here. You can override them, you can define them locally, you can create your own, you can use the ones that already exist. It is very easy now to modify these. Now, by itself, these decoration elements may not look very impressive in the change to the meta model, but really things are going to become a lot more powerful when we start tackling profiles, which is the objective of the next sprint. Profiles control pretty much everything else to do with configuration. So not just the decorations, but all the other aspects that are related to decoration, which facets are enabled, which facets are disabled, and so forth. And so they are quite powerful. Once we do exactly what we just did for decorations, but to profiles, a whole world of configuration is going to be available, and that's really the target for the next sprint. Thanks very much for listening.